Good evening, everybody. Hi, it's Robert Hansen. Welcome to our Friday night chat. It's February 24th. If you're just joining us for the first time, welcome aboard. If you're a repeating person and you've been sharing your Friday nights and Saturday nights recently with us, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Tonight, we're going to look at what I call the backstage pass to mediumship. How do mediums interpret? How do we receive? How do we request contact? How do we interpret the contact, give it to our guests? And time permitting, we're also going to look at how some other people may get contact themselves. So once again, I want to welcome you all aboard. And just before we get rolling, a lot of people have asked about my website, so I'll help you with that. It's Robert E., initial E, Hansen, HANSEN.com. There it has the complete calendar of events, upcoming events, questions, answers. Inside it has a little bit of my history, a little bit of my background, and it really is very, very informative. Also, a lot of you here tonight are on the Facebook. So we're going to begin. And if you have a question, you'd like to send through a question, I'll do my best to get to as many as I can within the time that we have tonight. Again, if you're just visiting us, please, welcome to our evening. You're welcome to record. You're welcome to share it, ask questions. So I'd like to get rolling. In the work that I do, many people, of course, come to see me who are dealing with tremendous grief. I share this all the time with people that come to my office privately, that people do not come to my office privately unless there is some level of profound grief. You know, when you're doing mediumship or what we call clear channel work, we're not dealing with lottery numbers, or am I going to move to Hawaii, or am I going to get married to the man of my dreams, which falls into the prediction prophecy realms. We are not here for any of that stuff. When people come into the office, whether it be a couple, an individual, a family, I know firsthand that grief is entering into my office. There is no mistaking it. You can see it in their eyes, you can see it in their body language, you can see it in their shoulders. They sit down, some of them almost fall down. They're carrying the weight of the grief behind them. And the reason why I'm making this comment is this. When you are grieving, and many people, of course, grieve, it not only leaves you very wounded, it leaves you pained, it leaves you sorrowful, it hurts like crazy, but it also makes you very vulnerable. And when you are vulnerable, you often are like what I like to describe as like a drowning person. You've slipped into the quicksand, you've slipped into the water, you're desperate to get out of it, you're clutching at air, you can't catch your breath, your heart is breaking, and you want somebody somewhere to tell you that those who you love, those who you miss, are not only around you, but they are at peace, they are at comfort, they have passed through the terminal of leaving the physical body and have entered into what often we refer to as eternity. Some people like the language heaven and so on, and they want to know they're at peace and they are at rest and that they are present in their lives. Do they know about the weddings and about the babies, and do they know about the funerals? And all of these things are what people are carrying in their heart, you know. So when someone is vulnerable, of course, it's very easy to convince them of something that may or may not be true. And this is where I want to get into the first part of tonight's talk. And once again, if you're just joining us for the first time, my name is Bob Hansen, Robert Hansen. Welcome. It's great to have you aboard. And to continue, when someone is wearing the banner of a psychic medium or a clear channel medium, they are suggesting to the person or the family that is in grief, or perhaps the audience, that they are a go-between, a conduit, a channel, a window, whatever term that you like, between the physical phenomena and the soul that inhabits the physical phenomena, meaning the living, and they are a conduit or a connection to those who have died. When we refer to those who have died, we of course are talking about the physical death, the ending of the organism, the ending of the body, the ending of the physical being, which is what we love and what we miss and what we want to wrap our arms around. But contained within that physical presence, of course, which is true of me, my children, my wife, everybody, is what we call the essence or the soul. That is where the communication takes place, and that is what is interpreted. What is remarkable about the soul, not only does it have the capacity to express itself, but it has the capacity to remember specific events, specific dates, specific names, not only connected to themselves, but to others. And that's really one of the remarkable things about the reading process. Here comes the little rub. When someone is grieving and when someone is hurting, which I've been alluding to the last couple of minutes, and they are vulnerable, common comments such as these are often accepted as communication or contact. I want you to know that your loved ones are at peace. I want you to know that they are around you. I want you to know that they forgive you. I want you to know that they know that you dream of them. I want you to know that they know that you think of them. They often say things such as, I want you to know they're aware that you have a piece of jewelry, or you may have a bracelet, or you may have someone's pocketbook, or you may have someone's fur coat in the closet. They want you to know these kind of things. With all respect, there are mediums that do read like that, and that is the body of their work. In my experience, those are very generic, very broad brushstroked types of comments. That is how they are interpreting, and I'm not here to criticize anybody, of course, but that is their level of interpretation, and that is what they send. They receive, or suggest that they're receiving, and give the feedback, quote unquote, to the grieving people. If the grieving people are very, very upset, if the grieving people are very much in what we call the believers category, they're going to bite. They're going to accept these comments as the oh my gosh comments, oh my God comments, and that's amazing. And then often the guest will say, well, that is my mother, that is my father, and so on and so forth. In my universe, in my world of readings, in clear channel readings, with all respect, that is not enough information. I'm sure in almost every family that you have met, everybody you know, maybe in your own family, for sure, there is very few women I have met that do not have a piece of jewelry connected to another person that has died. There are very few guys I know, including myself, that doesn't have my dad's tools. There's very rare that someone does not have someone that left a jacket in the closet or may have old shoes laying in the den. Are there people that used to love watching Friday night at the fights? Or did someone used to have a can of beer on a Saturday afternoon watching a ball game? Very, 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 very common things. Very, very common. To make communication really, to punctuate it, to make it real, to make it solid, to make it whole, there is a term you may have heard of called validating. Validating means that the medium is giving enough very specific, very accurate information that cannot be guessed at, cannot be probed for, cannot be researched for, cannot be manipulated out of an interview style psychic reading. It has to be presented in a way that the guest or the guest family basically says, oh my gosh, no one on earth could know these things that this person is saying. Now this part is very tricky. Because there are people who are grieving and are big believers, they want to do sometimes what we call make the information fit. They will search around in their head trying to come up with somebody to make that information fit. You understand? That should not have to happen. It really should not. I mean, there may be some memory flaws at work. There may be, oh, I forgot about Uncle Tom or something like that. For a couple of minutes, it may go on. That's true. Some people are focusing on their mother and their brother comes in instead, and they kind of are not thinking about that person. But once they hear the information, they go, now, wait a second. That's my brother Tom. That is not my mother. They can hear the difference, you know. So as I get into this conversation, I want to just be sure that if you're coming in right now, you're welcome to record. My name is Robert. Nice to have you guys in, especially the new people. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I love to make sure that you're really focused with me tonight. We're dealing with how does communication happen. When I teach these classes, by the way, and I teach them quite often every Saturday morning at my office here in Merrick, New York. We do a lot of work in this area. One of the things I tell my guests all the time, I don't care what style of interpretation you use. I don't care how you get your information. I have some people that do it with their eyes closed. Some people do it with their eyes open. Some people have to look away. Some people rub their hands. It doesn't matter. I often say, I don't care if you come into my office and you have bird feathers sticking out of your ears. I don't care how you do it. If that's your style, that's your personal style. However, when you give the reading to somebody, the information that you're discerning, in other words, the information you are interpreting, has to be very accurate and very specific for those guests. Otherwise, it falls into the generic categories of across the bird stuff, across all the boundaries. It just kind of cuts across. So, for example, going back to where I stated a moment ago, I'll make this up for a minute. Let's say I have a man coming to me, and he was an athlete kind of a guy, always enjoyed life, had a big laugh, a big smile, very big personality, liked to go to ball games, liked to have family gatherings. You dream about him from time to time. He always was very fond of you. Do you remember he used to have an umbrella on a rainy day? That kind of stuff. And people say, oh my gosh, that's my grandfather. And I look at them and say, no, that's my grandfather. I just described my own grandfather to kind of bring home the point that what they're hoping to hear cannot just fall into the category of generic. It doesn't hit them between the eyes. It doesn't punch a hole into their chest and say, I am here. It kind of gives them a sense of comfort. It may make them feel better, but it doesn't have that impact of real, what we call communion or real contact, which is the form of communication which we talked about a few weeks back, right? So there are different levels to different mediumships. I've heard it said by many, 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 many different mediums that we all read differently, and that is very true. We all read kind of differently in the same way every human being responds to their world differently. But again, to emphasize, at the end of the day, is the information accurate? Is the information specific? Is the information completely unavailable through any other resource other than the fact that the medium is kind of suggesting some very generic common things, which is why many people on the outside of the psychic field, so to speak, they chuckle, they laugh and say, everybody's got this, everybody's got that, are you kidding me, everybody's got that, everybody's got a ring. And you know what? In most cases, they're true. It is true. That's why they're laughing. And a lot of people who are wounded just want to believe it. And if you try to suggest anything else to them, they get upset because they feel like you're taking away their toys or you're taking away their imagination and all that kind of stuff, So we're going to get into this whole conversation for a minute about fantasy, magical thinking, mystical thoughts. I want to talk about the messages for a minute again, and then I want to give you the real messages. And then I want to explain how those messages are given. Now, again, I repeat, if you're welcoming us tonight for the first time, you're in the house for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's a great time to have you. We should be finishing in about an hour, half hour, something like that. And I want to take as many comments as I can and questions as I can. I will be taking a few questions in a minute, but I just want to finish this little piece up with you first. Now, many people want to hear messages. And I often say to these guys, what do you want to hear? I mean, what do you want to hear? And they'll look at me like this, like, well, I want to know if my mother is okay. I want to know if my brother is at peace. I want to know if my mother forgives me. Kind of stuff I suggested before. And the medium who wants to make you feel happy or wants to kind of impress you or kind of wants to make you feel settled and give you some comfort will say, of course, yes, your mother's happy, your brother does forgive you, they're all together as a family, they're waiting for you, they love you, they're always around you, and so on and so on and so on. And it's great. It's great. It's great. However, what is the proof other than the fact that the grieving person just wants to accept it because it feels good to do so. Got it? If that's comfortable for you as a person, then leave it there and that will be great. But most people I work with absolutely see the averageness in that, the generics in that, and they're expecting, and I don't blame them, they want more than that. They want some level of proof, which I talked about a little while ago. It is called a validated process. Therefore, when the reading comes through, there are typically 3 primary messages that come through the medium. 3. There are 2 more later on, which we'll get into if we have time later tonight. They don't deal with death initially. It has something else. But there are 3 primary messages. And in my experience, the first message is always the big boy. The first message is what we call the identifying message. That means the soul will give some information, some communication in which they describe to the family member in a specific way who they are and what happened to them. So, for example, the name John, very common name. Most families have a John. You mention John in a reading, the average person will look at you and say, everybody's got a John. And you know what? They're right. They do. They absolutely do. Then the medium says, one style of medium might say, yeah, but I have a John here who had a cardiovascular issue and had trouble breathing, and he was a really nice guy. Well, most people, when they cross over, have trouble breathing. It's called the death rattle. Most people have their heart stopping or some issues of heart flow. That is cardiovascular, and it falls into a very, very generalized category, right? But if you come across and say to somebody something like this, I have a man here by the name of John. He's making me had a breathing issue, but the reason why he had a breathing issue was he fell out of a canoe. And he hit the water, and he was saved. But the water caused an infection in his lungs. It wound up killing him, and he died a few hours after being rescued from a canoe drowning. Then the guest says back to myself, or someone perhaps like myself, and says, wait a second. My nephew's name is John. He was upstate in a lake. He fell out of a canoe, and he died later that night as a result of infections in his lungs. Nobody on earth knows that. Nobody. That's called the validation. The second thing they're going to do is they're going to explain who's around them. It may be a sister, it may be a brother, it may be a grandmother, it may be a neighbor next door. It is extremely important to receive those who come. Outsiders will say to me, well, what the heck are they doing here? That was my neighbor. Or, I haven't spoken to my grandfather in 30 years. Why is he here? They want to, like they ask a question about this. And the simple answer is they sense the presence of the channel, and they also sense the presence for their soul to express themselves. And then thirdly, they're also going to give me something that will prove that they are absolutely present. Absolutely present. We're going to continue with this in a moment. We have a lot of new people coming in tonight. I want to welcome all of you again. Thank you so much for being here. By the way, my website is robertehanson.com. And I'd like to make sure that you stay a part of this and check in on the calendar, and you'll see these things coming up on Facebook, and we can really get to know each other. I appreciate you being here. So the question now becomes, I've given the drowning of the canoe. I've described other people that are coming. I have a man here with a gunshot. I have a woman over here with breast cancer. I have, with all respect, I have a child that died of leukemia. And the guest is looking at me with their eyeballs popping like this, saying, the child with leukemia is my cousin. The man with the gunshot was my husband's brother, who was serving our great country, and he was shot in the head serving our country in Afghanistan. And the canoe person we know was the other cousin. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Nobody could know any of this, right? Nobody. And then I go off and say to them, you know what? This is going to sound completely wacky, but I got to ask you. Last night, and this, of course I'm making this up, but this is kind of how it works. I would say to the guests, last night, did you guys go to the racetrack and did someone have you sit on top of a winning horse? Like last night, not any time in the past, but last night, did you go to a racetrack and sit on top of a horse that just won the big flowers around the neck like that? And they stare back at me and say, our neighbor invited us to the track last night. They won a small stakes race. They put roses around the horse's neck. And my daughter, not me, my daughter sat up on top of that horse last night and we watched her do it. Unless you were standing in the stands at Belmont Stadium or someplace like that, nobody on earth could know that. How the heck do you know that? And how could you say that to us? How? Well, the man with brain cancer who's telling me he's your father was there. And the guest with tears coming down says, that's my dad. He had brain cancer. My daughter, his granddaughter, was his heart and soul. And he absolutely witnessed what we saw last night. Once again, this is called a validated process. Now, how does all of that happen, right? How does it happen? Well, this is a little bit detailed, and I'll get to it in 2 minutes, I promise. So don't go anywhere. I want to take a question, and I'd like to address it, and then I'll come right back to this topic with you guys, okay? I'm going to put my glasses on for a minute because I need to get this with my eyesight here. And once again, I want to welcome everybody who is new to this community. This is an evening of a chat. This is not a lecture. It's not a forum for teaching. It's just for information so that we can get to know each other a little bit better, right? Okay. I have a question here. It's from Victoria. Victoria asks, do you see what our loved ones look like, or do you just see signs and symbols? Excellent question, Victoria. So let me help you address that question. The answer to that is both yes and a no. And I hate saying that, but I got to be clear. If I say to somebody, perhaps you, Victoria, let's say I was reading you, and I said, I have a woman here, and she had a nice smile, and she had a beautiful hair, and she was very loving, very compassionate. She was full-bodied, very loving. She comes across as a nana, big personality, big smile, or perhaps the other way, she was very timid, very shy. She never wanted to talk. It could move your emotions. But that is so cross-cut across so many grandmother types, it's just too common. To get down an identification specifically in the session where the soul says or the guest says, no one would know that is what will come through. So for example, let's say your grandmother had an ear that was missing, or your father-in-law had his arm amputated. Or let's say someone had a terrific wound across the face from shrapnel from serving our great country in Vietnam. And it was a laceration across the nose and the chin. And I said, I have a man here with a laceration from eyebrow to lip. He's making me feel it came from Vietnam like a piece of shrapnel. And the guest says, wait a second, that is my brother. He was terribly wounded. He's a Purple Heart Silver Star guy. He was rescuing guys, and they cut his face wide open. It was never mended. He left it there. That is a unique characteristic that the soul will transmit. When people ask me where do I see them, people in mediumship often suggest they're walking around the room like Patrick Swayze was in the movie Ghost, moving pennies. No, 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 no. Their movement is unseen by the visible eye. The inner eye registers that. And in the inner eye, we witness, we call it, the appearance. The appearance is always given through the soul if they know that the medium for the guest will recognize the uniqueness of it. They also understand that things are generic, and they're not transmitting that. They will transmit something that they want their loved one to say, this is my father, this is my brother. There is no question. He had no fingers on both hands. That's the guy. Oh my God, that's the guy. A bomb blew up and blew up his hands. That's him. Now you're talking. But to say that someone had a big personality and a big smile, for me, it just is not going to work it. So therefore, when the interpretations come through, back to Miss Victoria here, I just want you to understand, we do see them in a very similar way as that we see people in life, but also very, very different. And as I keep reinforcing here in this first part of the evening, they come through to specifically give the medium something, in this case I'll use myself, to describe something quite specific. Is that clear? This is called a clairvoyant or a clear sight. You see clearly what the soul is showing. Now, this is also important. There are people that want to see or want to be told only what they want to hear. And for some mediums, they try to sell that back to the guest because they recognize or they're asked or they're told, I want to hear these particular things. And the medium says, sure, I'll tell you these things. No good. No good. The purpose of a clear channel is not to tell you what you want to hear. They are not supposed to sell you a reading. You're not paying to be given a pep talk. What you are providing their time and effort for is to receive what is being sent in a way that should leave no doubts in your head. None. When we interpret, it comes through this clairvoyant window. It's one of several doorways. Clairvoyant means, as I just said, clear sight. They will send images. They will send movements of thought that generate a certain reaction. Again, please welcome if you're new. I'm just about going into how we interpret clairvoyance. But if you're brand new coming into this Facebook Live tonight, thank you so much for being here. It's always great to have new people. I'm taking questions, so please, if you have one, send it through. Let's say, for example, and I just want to give this to you guys. Let's say someone shows me a handgun. All of a sudden, I'm sitting across from somebody, and I get a sense of a gun, or a gun to the head. A gun. Was someone a gunsmith? Was someone a police officer? Was someone an armed robber? Was someone in an armed robbery? Did someone commit suicide? Was someone murdered? Was someone defending somebody else and got shot? Did someone manufacture guns? Did someone work for Smith & Wesson? Did someone work for the Glock Company? Is it a military officer? It is a police officer. They bring security. Do they work as a federal marshal? There's a host of interpretations of a gun. Yes? You say to the guest, I'm being shown a gun, and if the guest now says back to the medium, oh, well, my father worked for Brinks Robbery, he had a lot of guns, the medium is not giving that. The guest is telling the medium, then the medium agrees. That is not a reading. The guest should be just saying, I understand the gun, what about it? And then it is up to the medium to interpret through the symbolism what we call a sentient feeling. In other words, a gut feeling rises. We get it in our gut that rises up and says, hold on, I know exactly where this gun belongs. This is a man who was a gun collector. He built guns. He had the movement at home where he could sit down, take apart a gun. He could make his own bullets. He made his own handles. He had custom graving done. That's who this is. And the guy says, whoa, my grandfather was a gunsmith. He was sought all over the country by people for his gun work. He made craftsman gunship. Oh my God, nobody knows that, right? That's what separates gun as a generic thing, which can be applied if you want to really make it work, or something that comes in so specifically that there's no wiggle room to say, oh, you're making this up. So the first part is clairvoyance, clear sight. The second is called audient. Audient means there's a clear hearing. Now, for some people, they might say, some mediums might say, I have a J sound, I have a K sound, I have an R sound, I have an M sound. With all respect, in most families, if we search far and wide, we're going to find somebody that's got those sounds and those initials. It's just going to happen, right? Come on. But when the medium is saying, for example, I have the name Cassius, and the guest says, wait a second, Cassius? That's my cousin's nickname. He wanted to be named after the great boxer Muhammad Ali, a.k.a. Cassius Clay, who was one of my great heroes, by the way. And they said they nicknamed their son Cassius. Oh my gosh, that's not just a C, that's a very unusual and specific C name. I met some really nice people this afternoon. And the mother had passed on and called out, and she said to me, this is not just my son, I called him Sonny. Sonny, S-O-N-N-Y. And he stared at me and says, the only time I was ever called Sonny was by my mother-in-law, and that's the only name she ever used for me. Nobody knows that. Nobody. And you just gave that to me. I said, I didn't give it to you. I'm just interpreting what she's telling me. She loves you. She is here, and she's proving she's here because she's calling to you by name specifically, and not the name you gave me when you walked in, which is different, but your nickname that she loved and gave it to me. And now I'm giving it to you. Do you understand that? Tears coming down the face a little bit. And the guy goes, yeah. Oh my God, no one else called me Sonny but her. Right? And then I said, by the way, she's telling me that she had some kind of a problem in her lung. Common? He goes, yes. And his beautiful wife was sitting nearby. Yes, that's true. I said, but she's telling me she had some kind of a undiscovered, unknown tumor in the lung. She had gone to a doctor, and the doctor sent from his office directly by ambulance to the hospital. She entered, was in and out once or twice, went in for her final visit, and never returned home. Do you understand that? With weeping in their eyes, the wife of the guy I was reading says, that is my mother. She's the one that always called my husband Sonny. So I sat back and I said, well, guess who's here? And she goes, it has to be my mother. No one else could possibly know this. I said, of course. But if I told you I had your mother here with a big smile and a happy face and all fur coats in the closet stuff, you would kind of shrug your shoulders and say that could be anybody. But the fact that it became specific is the key. So how then did I separate those names? How then do you hear those tones, right? That's a little tricky. It is. Even some of the best of us, there's a little waffling in the sound. It's almost like being on kind of a bad phone connection at times. Sometimes it connects really tight and other times. But when you're really silent inside and really listening, you will hear that tone. And it will catch very close to the sound of that name, if not specifically that name or the name of a connected loved one that is significant to you for a reason. Therefore, for me, I'm not telling what other mediums to do here. I'm not one that goes into the initial stuff, L's, J's, K's, and T's and Y's. Does someone have this? Does someone have that? It's like probing. It's asking questions. It's suggesting things to people. It's not for me. I'm going to take another question, and then we'll come back, and I want to talk about what we call the sentient push, which is the big one. And again, if you're coming in, it's about halfway into the evening. I want to welcome you. By the way, once again, if you're interested, my website is robertehansen.com. All my information, my calendars, all my personal appearances, events, all that kind of good stuff is there. I just want to tag it for you. And one more thing. I'm sorry, I don't want me to turn this into a commercial, but I want to help people. My book is out. Some of you may have gotten it already. It's this is my new book. It just got published. It's called Windows Without Walls. And it's available on Amazon.com. It's full of stories, insights, practical advice, how I read, what I do. It's got a spiritual information in it. It's really, I think, well presented, and it's a reflection of many years of my work. It's a very nice asset, a very nice tool to have. Windows Without Walls is its name. Robert E. Hansen, the author, available on Amazon.com. I want to take the next question, and then I'll go back and talk about the sentient interpretation, and we'll get to that in a minute. Okay? So let me go here. A woman by the name of Jerry asks, have you ever had someone come through, meaning someone to visit me, I assume she means, that you could not read? The answer to that question is no. I have never had that experience. And I'm not saying that, I am not saying that to brag. I'm saying that because that doesn't happen. Here's where the little bubble comes in, though. There are people that meet me, and there are people that I see that have come to visit me. And when they come through the office to make an appointment to see me privately or perhaps in audiences, and if you've ever seen me, you'll know I do this, I will always ask the audience, has anybody here seen me before? And a certain amount of people do put their hand up, and a whole bunch of other people say, no, we've never seen this guy before. Or people come into my office, right, and I say, have you ever seen me before for a group class? And they'll say, no, it's our first time we heard about this, and we'd like to see what it's all about. Understood. But when someone comes to see me privately, when someone goes out of their way to take the time to see me one-to-one or with a small family, we always ask them, the office will always ask, have you seen this guy before? If they say no, then we strongly, strongly, strongly push them to go see me in a public venue someplace before they commit their emotions and their time and so on to come see me privately. Because many people come in with this impression that I'm on some kind of a psychic cell phone. I can dial up whoever they want. We can have a little chit chat with their grandmother, with their brother, with their sister. They come in with kind of a list of who they want to talk to. I also want to talk to the late President John Kennedy, and can you throw in Princess Diana while you're at it? And they really believe this stuff because there are people out there that make the suggestion that they're communicating with the dead people and they can just call them in at will. With all respect, please, please, please keep your head on straight. Please keep your head on straight. That's just for fantasy land people. And I tell people, if you're here for fantasy, if you're here for magical thinking, mystical thoughts, all of that mojo, I am not for you. Therefore, my point is this. When the communication takes place, sometimes people will say to me, and I'm addressing this question for Thomas, I'm sorry, excuse me one second, for Jerry, excuse me, I apologize, for Miss Jerry, have you ever had someone come through? I will get a guest that will say to me, I know you got my grandmother, I know you have her brother, but I didn't come for that, they didn't come to me. And they get upset or they get disappointed. It happens, but it's very rare. It is very rare. Or why didn't they talk about my kids? That kind of a thing. Anyone that is authentic cannot make someone talk. They can't tell them what to say. They will express how they come. They will express information accurately. The guests will know it. They will understand it. But sometimes people will say, it's not what I wanted. Which means they want to control the reading and they only want to come through who they want to come through. I spent my money and my time and I want to hear who I want to hear from. When I hear that, I won't even take them on as a client because nobody but nobody can guarantee it. It would be like going to a doctor or a surgeon saying, if you don't guarantee the outcome 100% of this surgery, I don't want it. And the doctor will say, then don't do it. Because nobody can guarantee that. And when a medium says they can, in my opinion, run. Run. Because you're about to be taken. You are. You are. Unless you like all that generic stuff and you're willing to believe anything. And that's not me. And people that I work with, they won't accept it either. I need intelligent, sharp, on your game, skeptical, focused guests. I said this last week. Hide your jewelry. Change your name. Cover your tattoos. And above all, don't give any information. Let the medium bring the work to you. Don't fall into some kind of a slick interview with some psychic. It'll manipulate your heart and you're not going to get the real feel you're looking for. Now, we had first clairvoyance. Clairvoyance means clear sight. I'm receiving this information. When the souls send it, there's an old expression, you may have heard it. A picture's worth 1,000 words. I'm sure you've heard it. They don't have a voice in which they speak in the way I'm speaking to you, or perhaps you would be speaking to me. They don't communicate in dialogue. They don't have that. There is no mouth from which they speak. The soul has a way of expressing itself. It is the same way, for example, that love is expressed. You can say to your husband or your child or somebody, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And you can really put emotion into it. You can put passion into it. You can look them in the face. It doesn't touch what you really are feeling, right? It doesn't touch it. It's a distant cousin to that effect. Do you understand? It's like that also in the mediumship stuff. It's like that also with the mediumship stuff. It comes in at a certain movement deep internally, which is interpreted. Got it? Now, some of you are getting here a little bit late, and I appreciate you timing in with me. You're very welcome to be here. I'm Robert. My website again is robertehanson.com. But let me continue with this. So now we have the interpretation of the clairvoyant image. And like I said before about the gun, a seasoned medium, a good clear channel, a good intuitive channel will not only see the image, but they will understand within a couple of seconds exactly what that image means. And when that is translated to the guest, they usually go, oh my God, like that. They get, I call it a blowback. They get blown back like, wait a second. Nobody can know that. That's crazy. It has to have that component. It really does. When there are sounds, the clairaudient piece, that's gunshot wound, that's gunshots, car crashes, babies crying, birthday candles, celebrations, the name of songs, the name of music, who was the vocalist, who played the guitar, what kind of guitar song was sung, the names of ancestors, the names of friends and family, specific names of animals, which also are mentioned in readings all the time. All the time they mention the name of animals that have crossed over, that are with them. It's not uncommon. No, the animal is not talking personally or expressing personally, but the presence of the animal is felt, and a loved one who loves the animal for you and with you will let me know, or you know, that they are indeed there. That's the beauty of the animal part. But the third piece is key. The third piece is called sentient, which means you're sitting in a session, you're nice and calm, internally you're silent, everything is relaxed, the people are listening. I'm talking in a private session, in a busier environment, in a theater, in a restaurant, something like that, on stage. It's even more important to be quiet and still because of all of the distractions, all of the variables. I talked about this last week. It's easy to be quiet. You just close your mouth and you're quiet. But internally, you're still going 1,000 miles an hour. They cannot get through. What you must have is inner silence and outer stillness. Inner silence and outer stillness. And through that vehicle, your emotions are settled. You're settled. You know how you feel settled, you feel calm, and then suddenly there's a jolt. And you say, my God, I feel like someone shot somebody. Oh my God, it's overwhelming me. And the guest says, yes, my father shot himself in the head. That's it. Oh my God. When I hear one shot, for example, I know it's a suicidal passing. In a very rare case, it could be a one-shot murder or a one-shot to one of our great American heroes who was killed in the line of duty. But fundamentally, when I'm hearing murder or someone has been murdered, I'm hearing bum, 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 bum in my head. I'm actually hearing it, bum, 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 like that. And when that happens, I know a sequence of shots like that indicate to me murder is involved. When I hear just the one shot, boom. When I hear an explosion, it could be a house fire explosion, barbecue, propane tank, car gas fire. There's many options on explosions. But going back to the clairvoyance, they might show me a car. I might hear the explosion. I may hear the name Jerry. And suddenly they say, my God, that's my cousin Jerry or Geraldine. She died in a car crash. And I might say very rapidly, they keep showing me the American flag on July 4th weekend. They're putting fireworks all over it. And they go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. She died on July 4th weekend in a terrible car crash, terrible accident. That's exactly what happened to her. Holy mackerel, holy mackerel. I haven't seen her in 10 years, but I know that story. I went to her funeral, you see. And then all of a sudden they say, well, you know what? She's coming in with the man who broke his back. And then the head drops, and the guest says, that's my brother. He was jet skiing. He flipped, he broke his back, and he died of complications of a broken back. Dear God in heaven, the woman in the car fire is coming in with the man with the broken spine on the jet ski, and they're coming in united and at peace. Now this is a little tricky, okay? This is a little tricky, and I'll address this after the next question. Are all souls at peace? And are all souls together? We're going to come back to that in a minute, and I'll explain how this process unweaves. Excuse me 1 second, time for my glasses again. Excuse me. Thomas is asking, can our loved ones hear us when we talk to them? That's a great question, Thomas. And the answer to that is absolutely 100% yes. However, I always have these little howevers. I need to explain it. Okay? There are people that can talk to somebody without saying a word. I'm sure you've seen it. You sit at the kitchen table as a little guy, or maybe you have kids, and they're starting to act up at the kitchen counter or something, and you just kind of look, and they kind of get a look, and they look back, and they go, uh-oh, there's going to be a bump here. We better not fool around too much. Daddy or mommy is looking at us. You're kind of talking without talking. Yes? There is a way of doing that. Many times people say, I talk to my brother in silence, and they pray in some form of prayer, and there's no invocation of words. They're just doing it internally. It really doesn't matter, to be very honest with you, whether it's done internally or externally. It truly doesn't matter. What is important is, can the soul respond to it to let you know? In other words, when you say a prayer to somebody, anybody, it doesn't matter who, right? How do you know your prayers are being heard? How? Right? Many people will say, well, I believe it, I have faith in it, which is fine, and it may be comforting for them. What's the proof? What's the proof? Other than you just want to believe it. And a lot of people, and I've met sadly, they have prayed tremendously for people to be saved and for people to be healed and children not to die. And their quote prayers, and they were often told their prayers were not answered, or their prayers were answered and the answer was no. And you tell that to a mother who's buried a 4-year-old from leukemia, watch out. Watch out. They don't want to hear any of that stuff, that their prayers have been denied. They say, I'm a good person, I was a great person, I volunteer, I'm a wonderful person, and my little person died on me, and I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed, and my prayers were not heard, or they weren't received, or they were turned down. You see? So when someone talks to a soul, or when someone is expressing themselves to a soul, the answer to your question is yes, but, you have to talk to them through silence. It just can't be the movement of your head chattering or your mouth moving. It doesn't respond to them the same way. It doesn't. It's almost like you're sitting at work and you hear some kind of a distant scratchy noise or something. It's just, it doesn't have the same feel. What is required is to sit, and it doesn't mean you have to go into a big, deep state of meditation. It just means you sit and you really get still. And then it calls them to you, because now your window and their window are opening. By the way, we have some last latecomers that are coming in. My name is Robert Hansen. Welcome very much. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes left to tonight's session. But if you're coming in late, thanks for being here. Once again, my website is robertehansen.com. Welcome aboard. We're talking about tonight how mediums receive their symbols and how do we interpret. So there were 3 primary things from my point of view that have to be interpreted. Who are they authentically? Clairvoyance. What happened to them? What is their story about? What is their role in the family? How did they die? How did they affect you? Number 2, who were they with? Whether by incident, by name, by event. But they're going to tell you they're around all of these other people. There's a lot of souls that will come. And then thirdly, they want to let you know that they are present, right? Thus the horse story. Now, for example, going back to the horse story, which I shared a few minutes ago, I'm actually sitting there, and in my head, I am seeing a horse, an actual horse, like an animal. They know that I know what a horse looks like, and they put someone on top of it that comes across to me as a young lady, and the guest says, that's my daughter. Now, I get a feeling that it was recent, and it feels so recent, that I said last night. If I said that anyone ever sit on a horse at any time, well, all 4 of my kids did. They took riding lessons. They went on those little ponies at parks and all that stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the night before, sitting on a horse, sitting at a racetrack, flowers around its neck, and the person with brain cancer says, I was there. There's no wiggle room for the guests, because now they say there's no one on earth that could know this. This is communication. Images, vibrational sounds, the emotions that contact. In some cases, they will refer to scent or smell. For example, sometimes I'll be sitting in a reading, and it's called Clairvoyance. It's one of the lesser but very powerful, but not as frequent, but very powerful tools. Now, someone might say, I smell my father's Old Spice cologne. My dad used Old Spice. I've used Old Spice. My grandfather used Old Spice. Most men out of that generation liked Old Spice. Some guys used Brut. Some of you remember Brut. I don't even know if it's around anymore. And on and on and on. And some people say, I can smell my mother's perfume. Right? Well, yeah, you remember what your mother's perfume smells like, and suddenly your brain activates that smell in the head, and it makes you feel like there's something going on. Right? That's kind of a calling, like a sign. It comes in that way. But in a reading session, I'm sitting there with no references to anything, and I go, you know, I'm smelling coal. Have you ever smelled coal before it's burned? It's got a very unique smell. And I go like, poof, it's like a lot of coal, like a coal fire or something. And then the guest leans forward and says, my uncle died in a coal mine cave-in. And when they pulled him out, he smelled like charcoal from head to foot. Nobody knows that. Why would I mention charcoal in the middle of the summer to somebody other than a barbecue, right? Those are the things that we look for in a session. And under the deepest scrutiny from outsiders who struggle accepting this process at all, which I absolutely respect, they turn around and say, I don't know what's going on here, but something's happening. This particular medium is bringing all this crazy stuff, and we can't understand how it's occurring. I had that today, and I said, doesn't it feel like I'm sitting inside your family? And they go, yeah, it does. You know, it does. It does. And that's how this should happen. So, getting back to kind of to the beginning for the new people that are coming in, when mediums are interpreting, we all interpret differently. That is very true. I always say to the people that I teach and that I work with, I don't want you to read like me. Everyone is unique in your own style of readings. You are. And you don't want to read like somebody else. You want to be you. But when you deliver the mail, when you deliver the messages, when you deliver the validations, when you deliver the information, we all have to be at the same day, at the same end, with the same conclusions. I don't care what mathematician sits down at a desk, 1 + 1 is going to be 2. Correct? That should be happening as well with the psychic. They should be coming to the same point, perhaps through a different path up the mountain, but specifically, they have to be arriving at the same point. Otherwise, as I've said throughout these last couple of weeks, you're going to arrive at that place where it really feels a little unfulfilling. There's not that pop that you might want, unless, like I said before, you're so overwhelmed by grief, you're willing to buy into almost anything, you know. And that's really not a good guest. You're much better off waiting until the time is right when you can focus. But let me get to another question for you guys. Oh, this is from Veronica. Is there a waiting period before you can make contact? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I have had readings within hours after a death. As a matter of fact, I'll use my own family with this one. And as many of you may have known, my mother just passed away 3 months ago. And my mother and I were very, very close. And I've been doing this for more than 2 decades now. I absolutely know when my brain is thinking in memory and my emotions of memory are with me about my mother. I think her, I miss about her. I know it. I went to the cemetery today, actually, to pay my respects. And I know I was there emotionally for my mother. I knew it. I knew it. And then there are other times when I absolutely get the vibration that I get when I'm in session, when I'm reading, and I know it's got nothing to do with my imagination, nothing to do with my memory, and my mother comes to me clearly. And she did that about 2 hours after she died. 2 hours. I've had readings where people have said to me, what you're describing happened last night, and it's 9 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, let's say, and the passing I described happened 8 hours ago. So, Miss Veronica, I am telling you, as a friend and as a medium, it has nothing to do with it. Outside people, I've seen say this to people, well, they need months of transition and all of that. I guess you can accept what they have to say. Maybe for them it's true. I don't know. In my experience, no way. No way. Love does not have to wait for anyone. It comes immediately. If there is blockages to it, if there is non-clear reading capacity, if the medium is struggling with opening the window, if the guest is just too overwhelmed by grief and can't pay attention, excuse me, those are clearly clear possibilities. But fundamentally, if the channel is open properly and the guest is sitting there and it is being received, 100% time is not a factor. It is not. Love does not require time. Love is instantaneous. Now, I got to share a little bit with you guys, too, about something else, just for a minute, a little bit about, I guess, business, if you like. Many people are visiting from out of state, and they want to be read, and they want to have an opportunity to sit with me and have a session. Well, there's a way to do that. We have this thing called Zoom Room. Zoom Room. And we take 6 people. Only 6 people. And you come on live with me, just like we're doing tonight, but actually we see each other face to face. We only take 6 people. It's 2 hours. And I will read each person individually that attends that session. If you are interested in something like that, please contact the office. Please contact us through the website. Let us know that you're interested. And we would be very, very happy. It is very popular here. A lot of people love it. And we have beautiful, beautiful readings. So whether you're visiting from LA, or you're calling from the great state of Georgia, or you're coming in from Canada, I can meet you live and we can bring your family to you and really help you heal. Also, if you're local to the Long Island metro area, my office is in Merrick, New York, here on the South Shore of Nassau County in Long Island. I work all over this area, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, Westchester. I mean, I'm all over the place. We do the same thing live with me, physically live at my office. We put together 6 people in a little group, and it's 2 hours, just those 6 people and me. And we really, really get into it. And you would be shocked at how much stuff comes through, what comes through, and the healings that take place. It is why I do this work. It really is to help people really come to that healing place. Before we start to wrap this up a little bit, we're coming to the last 3 or 4 minutes of the night, so I'd like to welcome you, but I have to say goodbye to you in the next couple of minutes. So I just want to kind of finish this up with you. I did mention the book, Amazon.com. It's Windows Without Walls. It's a really, really, really popular event. My website is robertehanson.com. And lastly, I just want to take the opportunity to let you guys know about next week. Now, if you'd like to tune in next Friday night, there's the Laws of Attraction. We have the Laws of Attraction coming up next Friday night, which is March the 3rd. I'm not just talking about romantic attraction between you and somebody else. There are many other types of attractions. What attracts you to spiritual practice? What attracts you to negative thinking? What attracts you to negative behavior? What attracts you to what we would call positive behavior? What attracts the children that have left you to return home? What attracts you to seeking something? The laws of attraction are not just about romanticmatchmake.com, which is very popular, I get it, and it serves its purpose for those guys, I guess. But the laws of attraction are a spiritual practice, which has gone back for thousands of years. There have been recently the book called The Secret and some other stuff. It's a very popular title, I get it. But it's much deeper than you may imagine. So if you're interested in the spiritual practice of attraction laws, that'll be the topic for next week. We also have coming up over the next weeks, as many of you may know, I spent a lot of years working in the special ed environment. I work with many, many children. As recently as this week, actually, I just volunteered with a little boy that's got autism. And my own son, my wife and I, Kathleen, have a handsome son, a beautiful young guy. His name is Bobby, named after guess who. He'll be 25 in September. He was born with autism, has dealt with autism since he was a little fella. 18 months he was diagnosed. And he is a story of recovery. He is a story of hope. He came from a place from having no language, couldn't look you in the eye, all kinds of body attitudes, all kinds of gesturing, hands in the mouth, running around, couldn't talk, couldn't speak, little yellow buses. And today, he has a full-time job, drives a car, takes vacations on his own, has a beautiful girlfriend, is out in the world, and I'm going to have him here with me. And you can actually ask my son what it's like to be autistic, what are the fears, what are the anxieties, what it's like for a dad and son to bind. If you have a child with autism, if there's someone in your family, if you work in special ed, I don't care. Please be a part of that night. That's coming up as well. So keep your eyeballs open, pay attention to the website, get online, get involved with this. It's from my heart to your family. And we spend Friday nights together for an hour or so and try to help clarify some of these big confusions and misunderstandings about the psychic process. Does that make sense? So to finish this up, guys, before we conclude the evening here, and again, I want to thank all the people that came in. If you just got here, thanks. I hope you're catching some idea of my intentions on these posts and on this Facebook process. It's to bring me to you and you to me, most of you to see my face or my writings, and that's very nice. I appreciate it. but I want you to know I'm a regular guy, I'm a married guy, got kids, play sports. I'm one of you guys. And what I do is try to help people understand this great process. So to finish this up and put a bow on the package, a clear channel medium is an interpreter. And the analogy I use all the time in my classes is as follows. If the president of one country is talking to the president of another country, and neither one speaks the common tongue, let's say one guy is speaking Turkish, one guy is speaking Japanese, they can't communicate. The Japanese will hire an interpreter, the Turkish guy will hire an interpreter, and they will interpret exactly what is being said by those presidents. Yeah? If they start to modify it, leave things out, sell the interpretations, all of that mojo, they would be fired and there would be problems. The role of a clear channel is to tell you exactly what is coming through, what is the intention of the soul, why does the soul come through, and it's to bring relief and comfort to the families. That is why it comes through. But to have that, you must have clear information, you must have names, perhaps dates, cause of death, relationships, and then the miracle of shift takes place where your grief suddenly lifts and the great sense of peace comes, and you know that your loved ones are with you, they are around you, they hear your cries at night, they hear your laughter during the day, and they've come to share their presence with you. My name is Robert Hansen. My website is robertehansen.com. I want to thank all of you guys for coming tonight. I look forward to meeting you over the weeks to come. Next Friday night, Laws of Attraction, right here, 7 o'clock, same time. Namaste. I wish you all peace. Have a good evening. Thank you.